Our next item of business is a debate on motion number 5307 in the name of Alex Neil on safer lives, changing lives, working together to end violence against women. 6 minutes, please. Shirley-Anne Somerville, followed by Rhoda Grant.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The statistics regarding domestic violence have already been set out in some detail by colleagues, so there is no need for me to repeat them, and they are helpful to a point in describing the extent of the problem. But they don't, I think, get over the impact of the isolation, intimidation, the degradation, the physical assaults, the rapes, the murders have on women and children across Scotland year in, year out. I welcome the Scottish Government's commitment to ending violence against women and the joint publication with COSLA of Safer Lives, Changing Lives. I also welcome the contribution made by Women's Aid in relation to the single outcome agreements reached with local authorities. There have been some improvements, as they point out, but we can and we must do better, and there are no doubt lessons to learn. And one issue which does require further examination is the amount of information available regarding domestic abuse. The only national indicator available is statistical information collected by the police on recorded incidents of domestic violence, and it is difficult to measure progress either nationally or locally against that one target, as increases in reporting may be caused by more women feeling able and supported enough to report abuse, or it may represent a more sinister increase in the number of victims. And I was therefore pleased to see that the Safer Lives, Changing Lives approach acknowledges the range of information that needs to be improved. Certainly.
I wonder if you would agree with me, given the concerns about single outcome agreements identified by Women's Aid, that it would be helpful for the Ministers to refuse to accept a single outcome agreement without an equality impact assessment having been done on it in order to protect these services.
I don't necessarily think that there is one simple solution to that. I did say that there are lessons to be learned, and we need to do that across the way that single outcome agreements are being used, particularly in this issue of domestic violence. But with that caveat, the motion is very welcome. It is vitally important that we don't lose sight of the good work that is going on in local authorities and in other agencies across Scotland. I take encouragement from the success of the Caledonian system, piloted here in Edinburgh, the Lothians and in the Borders, which provides services to women and children affected by domestic violence and encompasses a 2-year programme of intervention targeting perpetrators. I was very pleased, therefore, to see that the Scottish Government has committed to nearly £2.5 million to fund out the rollout of this scheme across the country. And this type of prevention work is vital, with figures showing that over 60% of victims have previously suffered from abuse. So we must not only punish the offenders for their past behaviour, but do all we can to prevent future attacks by challenging and changing that behaviour in the future wherever possible. I was also pleased to see that the Ministers, again working in partnership with COSLA, have launched the National Domestic Abuse Delivery Plan for Children and Young People, mentioned earlier by the Minister. In the vast majority of occasions, the child is in the same room or in the next room while their mother is being attacked, and half of the residents in women's refuges are children. Not exactly an ideal set-up to bring up your family. So it is perhaps no surprise that a significant proportion of teenage boys and girls think that using violence in an intimate relationship is acceptable in certain circumstances. It does not make them more violent, as some members seem to suggest, but it does certainly make them more likely to be victims in the future. The impact of both mother and child was brought home to me at a party I recently went to, organised by Shakti Women's Aid in Edinburgh. By the time I arrived with some of the staff, the room was already full with women and children enjoying a fantastic day. And given the dancing and hilarity between the women and the very enthusiastic use of the bouncy castle by the children, it was very difficult to comprehend that everyone in that room was there because they had been helped by the organisation to break away from violent partners, husbands or other members of their extended family. That day was a million miles away from the horror that they lived through for too long. One of the women I spoke to told me how she had recently arrived in Edinburgh from London after leaving her abusive partner. She felt that she was truly starting a new life, being reborn, she put it, after the help she received from Shakti. She and everyone else present were a tribute to the hard work and dedication of the staff of not only that one organisation, but the many others across the country working in this sector. It is literally a life-saving service in many circumstances. However, we as a society are still failing one group of women in particular, those who have no recourse to public funds. There is something fundamentally wrong when charities such as Shakti are unable to offer refuge places to women and children fleeing domestic abuse because they don't tick the right box according to an immigration system and are therefore not entitled to financial assistance. Charities do what they can to help, but they are placed in an impossible situation, and often women are forced to remain in an abusive relationship as they have nowhere else to go, no family or friends to turn to. Now, I understand that the Home Office has announced a pilot project on this matter, and I hope this is a first step to resolving this absolute discrimination once and for all. In conclusion, Deputy Presiding Officer, while there has been a lot done under previous administrations and this government to tackle domestic abuse, there is much more that still needs to be done. Crucial to the monitoring of progress and accountability of all bodies involved in the battle against domestic abuse will be better information. That said, I do believe we are moving towards a situation where we have the right mix of national leadership and local implementation. That implementation is vital because behind every statistic is an individual who is isolated, alone and abused, and we should never lose sight of that abuse nor of our resolve to end domestic violence once and for all.